Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, we've been running this story since morning. Let me just remind you again that there used to be the good old women in the neighborhood from Patinga to Gusho caring for their grandchildren. But today, they've been branded witches, driven out of their homes to live elsewhere. The over 500 women now live in small cottages on the outskirts of the communities, struggling to survive but unwilling to go home for fear of being lynched. My colleague Justice Bedu visited the Patinga Witches Camp and has put together the documentary Camps of Bondage. Here are excerpts.
One man, Ibrahim Dana, at the Glago community died, and the community members said he suspected he didn't die a natural death. So they decided to bring in a soothsayer into the community to perform some ritual. And they alleged that after the ritual, it indicated that it is Memunatu Mindo who killed the man, and so she's a witch. We have had several incidents in the northern region here where they would accuse somebody of being a witch.
My journey begins with a 600-kilometer trip to Tamale, the northern regional capital. I have been picked up by Aliyah Mohammed.
I work directly with all the alleged witches in the 5 camps that are currently hosted by the region.
ActionAid has been rescuing people suspected of witchcraft from camps here for over 10 years now.
Majority of us claim we are people of faith. If we are not Muslims, we are Christians, or we are traditional believers. But this is something that is deep-rooted in people's hearts and their blood. Even people who have acquired high level of education, you have PhD holders, and when they talk about witchcraft, it can just put you off. Yeah. In our communities, a woman must have a level to which you will express issues that concern you. There's a level at which you should go. And so a woman who is very confident and assertive can easily be accused as a witch, because it's not common to find a woman talk about things. No.
It's nightfall by the time we arrive in Patinga town. The next morning, I head to the camp. In northern Ghana, singing and dancing is the best way to say welcome. The singing and dancing ends. The women coil back into their lonely shells. This is home to over 100 women. It's one of the largest witches' camps in Ghana. Memunatu Sando doesn't even remember exactly how many years she spent here, but thinks she's been here for about 20 years. She's the oldest here and has seen many like herself accused of witchcraft, chased out of their homes, brought here to endure a life of solitude, and left to die in tattered penury.
All right, so those are excerpts of the documentary that will be showing at 6:30 later today. But I've been joined in the studio by Women Empowerment Advocate Angela Jamla-Boaji. She's also director of the ACK Foundation. Angela, you're welcome. It's been a while.
Yes, Gifty. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well. And I hope that the Women Empowerment drive is going in a way that you can call encouraging?
I'm not sure now.
You're not sure now?
No.
There's still a lot more work to be done.
Lots and lots more work. There seems to be a lot more retrogression.
Retrogression?
Yes, there's a bit of retrogression in the system.
I can agree with you looking at this video, because obviously this is one of the typical reasons or examples that you can use to say there is the level of retrogression that you speak about.
Yes, we should have gone a little more forward.
But by now, which was going to actually be my first question about why we're still where we are, why we're still telling the same old depressing stories, for example, about witch camps after all the efforts over the years.
You're right. I think that we need to realize as a society that we haven't built our institutions well. Our institutions are not strong. We started talking about witch camps way back probably in the late 80s into the 90s. There have been several conferences, which I'm very tired of.
I can imagine.
Several seminars and workshops. But there's been amazing work done locally by organizations such as Action Aid, together with some development agencies belonging to, for example, the Presbyterian Church in the North. There are organizations that I know that have done local work. That is very important concerning this. We've talked ad nauseum about this issue. Strategies abound, some of which have been tested, tried, and have worked. Some of it have been very challenging. Can you
give us an example?
So, for example, there was a whole project that was started by the ministry under the erstwhile administration involving Action Aid and a few local organizations. Of course, that work had gone on over a period of time before there seemed to be, a coalition around the issues for more strategic work. And that work was supposed to, engage the community so that when you close down a camp, the communities understand that they are receiving back one of their own into the fold. Now, it takes a multidisciplinary approach to do this. And there have been some successes about this.
Right.
So I would think that by now we are looking at trickling down or, expanding that kind of work. Unfortunately, anytime there is change, everything seems to go back.
Okay, now that's a very interesting area to explore.
Yes.
If you say anytime there is change, everything goes back, I'm looking at the political change that the country has experienced. Now, are you saying that there has been a fallback on the strategy that was being implemented then under the, let's say, Oyelitha administration of the ministry?
I'm not quite sure what has happened because I haven't been there to ask.
Okay.
So it will be very, very difficult for me to say that there's been a fallback.
Okay.
But I've worked in this area long enough to know without searching very hard.
And without asking.
Yes, when there's been a fallback. And that has to do really with the fact that faces change, people change, documentation is lost, contacts, networking is lost, coalitions break up, and these things it's the nature of women's work. It's the nature of dealing with issues of justice, social justice, human rights, and so on. You need continuity, and you need people with a lot of passion and a lot of political will. And it has to continue over administrations, over, if I went away, if God took me to heaven, it shouldn't stop anything. But unfortunately, in this kind of work, just by reason of the fact that one of us went away somewhere, a lot of things can fall apart because it's driven by the passion of people who see there's a need to do something, about it. If you don't have people in institutions of state who feel that way, know that way, and want to do it, it all falls back. That has to do with social justice. It has to do with women's issues, children's issues, issues of disability. I mean,
so
we've done this for
in essence, what you're saying is that democracy is a bane in the fight against some of these things, right?
Well, not quite. Democracy also means building strong institutions. And strong institutions have institutional memory.
Okay.
Okay, so if there have been strategies that have been tested and tried over the period, then it takes whoever is coming in to come and continue.
Right.
But I keep saying that person has to have that passion. That person needs to network with those who have done the work for a very long time.
Okay.
There are people on the ground in the north who have dissected this issue completely
Over the years.
over the years.
Okay.
They have the solutions, but the solution will take money. It will take political will. It will take the involvement of local administrators. And it will take a coalition of minds to work it out.
Let's get a bit specific with this. Now, let's talk about the Ghana administration. And we're talking about, in this case, when I say administration, I mean the Oyelitha-led ministry.
Right.
And now the Otiko Afisa-Jaba-led ministry.
Right.
What would you say? You've worked with Nana Oyelitha
Yes.
at the time.
Yeah.
You're still in the business of women empowerment advocacy.
Yes.
Within the time, or between the time that Oyelitha was there and left, and now that Otiko Ajaba is in charge, what has changed?
I wouldn't know.
I'm asking because, and that's why I brought the preamble, that you are still in the business. You have still, you're still had engagements.
I'm having my engagements. You know, I work directly with women and children who have suffered sexual and gender-based violence and domestic violence. In my field, yes, I'm still doing what I have to do
with the ministry
as an advocate. No,
you're not doing
really,
any collaborations. You're not doing any collaborations with the ministry.
Well, I wouldn't say I am, and I'm not sure I know that many people who are, but I'm pretty sure that the ministry knows.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the ministry should come to you, for example, and I mean, or if you have to go to the ministry, for example, to try and deal with this issue, is this something you'd like to take on anytime soon?
Well, it's not about me. It's about the nation realizing we have a problem on our hands. It's about those in authority who have the mandate of the citizenry to ensure that people's rights are respected irrespective of who they are. Now, these women, as anybody's grandmother, my grandmother, your grandmother, you would realize that there isn't one rich woman in those camps. There isn't one very young person, even though occasionally you might find a few young women there. It is poor women, mostly menopausal or post-menopausal, who don't have strong social ties, without strong family members who, you know, can back them up, who can speak for them, who end up there. I know because I've been there. Okay. And so it's about us realizing that these are voiceless persons. But there are organizations that have worked in this for years. That's where I come back to the place. ActionAid is still doing some work. I'm sure they probably are collaborating with the ministry. I would have loved it if ActionAid was here. But I'm talking about even the more local organizations that have done a lot of work, including in economic empowerment work with women such as these. It's a long-term kind of work. It's not something that comes to just shut down the camps.
So the reason we are where we are as a country is because it's a long-term project that keeps being truncated along the line.
It does, unfortunately. And it's not to do with NPP or NDC. It's the way it's been for a long time.
For a long time. For a long time.
It's from administration to administration, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can have any way of dealing with this. I don't know. I get stuck. But let's hear the Gender, Children and Social Protection Minister, Otiko Afisa-Jaba, on what she had to say about this on the floor of Parliament last Friday.
The issue of reintegrating is of serious concern to the ministry. We have visited the Gambaga witches camp, and we've put some of them on the leap. And with the new leap, what we intend is that those who can be reintegrated, the various discussions between the community and the alleged witches will continue to go on. However, some of them don't want to go back to their communities because they feel that anytime something bad happens in the community, Mr. Speaker, they are the first to be accused if somebody's child dies or there's any mishap. And so because of that, we intend with the new leap to provide the productive ones with skills training, and wherever they want to stay, we will support them with the productive inclusion to be able to live on their own. The whole idea is their well-being, and if they don't feel safe enough to stay in their original homes, then we would have to help them to resettle.
Otiko Officer Jaba is Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection. You've heard what she has to say on the floor of Parliament. Angela, is this creating a certain level of fatigue that will end up taking us to square one from where we started in the future?
I hope not, actually. I need to be more hopeful than I'm sounding.
Perhaps optimistic.
And optimistic, yes. I need to be that, because you can't afford to give up hope. The issues of human rights of women in this country is terrible. Let me just say that. It is just terrible. Whether you're taking female genital mutilation. Look, just last week, there was a consortium here in Accra looking at the issue of female genital mutilation, and you should have been there. Whether it's about cruel widowhood rights, whether it's about witches' camps, or it's about the rates and the incidence and prevalence of domestic and sexual and gender-based, the issue of human rights of women in this country is still terrible.
What do we do?
Our institutions should wake up. You know, any country that does not really pay enough attention to the issues of the vulnerable is in big trouble, because that's your human resource. They're going to create trouble for the 10% that are okay. I mean, this one, you don't need rocket science to know. And so it's important for us to really open our eyes. I'm looking at the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice. I mean, when it comes to corruption, you might hear a lot more from them. When was the last time you heard anything to do with the human rights of women and children in this country? I'm looking at our Ministry of Gender. It's a policy coordinating institution. The truth of the matter is policy coordination institutions and policy advocacy institutions are not supposed to be implementing. But when you face a problem like this and everybody is asking you, then you start talking like doing projects. They don't work. You find the people who are in it, and then you work them. Exactly, you support them, you back them up with the law, with the policies, with the resources, and they work, you take the credit. So you have the Gender Ministry, you have the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, you have all the local government administrations that are supposed to be doing gender budgeting and ensuring that some of these things are taken care of under their budgets. I'm sure it is the last thing on their minds. But we've done gender budgeting in this country for the last, I can't count how many years. So where did all that information go? Okay, if they don't budget for these things, they won't pay attention to it, because the people who move into the communities need the resources to move. They need the police to help them. They need the district chief executives to help them to get into the communities and gain the attention of the communities. They can't do it on their own. And that's why there seems to be a lot of fatigue when it comes to civil society organizations working in this area.
Do you see, in that case, a future for civil society organizations, as you just said?
We can't afford to do without civil society organizations, community-based organizations, faith-based. We can't afford to do without them.
But fatigue will just break the backbone of people.
Yes, and that's the reality. But I think that, again, I say we can't afford to be hopeless. I think a lot has been done already. My prayer is that we go back to where these things have already been outlined, see the best practices which are really in the system. We don't have enough time to recount more and more of these best practices. Like the FGM thing I talked about. If you talk to the organizations that are working in it right now, you'll be amazed at what they have done even up till now, converting people who are cutting, you know, the children, you know, and making them advocates. There are tried and tested things. What we need is some attention.
The specific case of the Patinga witch camp, what can you say about it? About 500 women, and in that documentary that we're going to show at 6:30 today, you realize that the person in charge of this camp is a male, and there are reports, there are suggestions that he's actually molesting some other women.
Well, it shouldn't surprise us. If you take any of the research reports, you would find all of these things in it. From Gambaka witch camp to Patinga to the ones that are spread across parts of the northern part of the country. You know, the reports are there. And that's why I'm saying that this back and forth will never help. It will come back 2030 when I'm probably 80. and be talking about these same things. So we're just appealing to the authorities that, you know, it's not really about having another conference or another workshop or seminar or whatever. It is going down to where the issues are happening and those active players holding their hand.
Okay, so in this particular
yes.
case, you suggest that the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection should go to Patinga, go to this witches camp and do what?
No. They should
go to the community.
They should get the action aids and those other organizations that have worked in this already, okay? And say, we will support you and the district administrations in those communities to bring an end to this.
To close the camp down?
No, you don't start by closing the camp down. You start by doing a lot of retooling of the community's minds about who these women are and what's probably wrong with them. It's a lot of conscientization and a lot of sensitization, and that's long-term work.
Okay.
When you do that, you must be at the same time offering protection to the women in the camps. So you ensure, for example, that they are not being molested and abused, which would mean education for those who run the camps and monitoring from institutions like the DOFSUS and the police on the ground, plus the social welfare and the Commission on Human Rights. They monitor the camps and the welfare of the women in the camps while the communities are being resensitized. That might take 5 years, who knows? But the women must be protected. And so by the time you start a reintegration process, you would have a community waiting.
Okay.
With more, it will take time. Like the lady said, it's in people's minds and hearts. But it doesn't mean it can't change, because we were not where we you know, yes, we've changed. Okay. You and I have changed, haven't we?
Indeed, we have changed. And I'm just going to throw in this very final questions about NGOs and about foundations, etc. There's this thought out there that most of them go out there, they put themselves together as organizations working for these women. They make budgets, they get a lot of support, a lot of donations, and at the end of the day, what do we see? The same problems that they are meant to deal with remain, even after hundreds of thousands of cedis or dollars have been spent.
That's the nature of the work. But you see, it's one thing to think that there's corruption in the sector. I wouldn't be surprised that there's corruption in our sector. It's everywhere. Okay? But let me put on my pastor's hat. If you spend the poor person's money, you're going to pay for it one day. You know, if you have that in mind and you know you're working for the poor, don't put your hand in there. Do what you said you will do. Okay, but let me now take off my pastor's hat.
So if you do what you...
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is this. These organizations have worked and we haven't seen a lot of results because, you see, they are small, private-led organizations. They are not the state. That is why there needs to be a scaling up of their work backed by our institutions, so that even when the organizations fall apart or go away or whatever, the institutions of state take on the work that they have done, incorporate it in their own work, and continue with it. Because, you see, you can't take me to court because that woman is in the camp.
In the witch camp.
Exactly. I'll do the best I can. But I can take Ghana to court because the state is violating the human rights of the women. And it's because we don't do a lot of these things. But yes, I can take Ghana to court for that. Okay, which means that state institutions have their responsibility. Okay. Constitutional wise, and all those human rights instruments that have been signed to ensure that these citizens, and they are full citizens, their rights are protected.
Okay. I'll take your very final word if you have any, and we'll wrap up this conversation, Angela.
Well, I'm happy we are talking about this because I believe that in a sense the media also helps to bring back onto the front burner some of these issues that seem to be pushed back from time to time.
That people get fatigued about.
Yes, that people get fatigued about. So it raises the consciousness of people around these issues. I'm, for example, hoping that the church in Ghana would be paying attention to this documentary. Because, you see, when you see this, you also think, okay, yes, the state has its thing, but the church, don't you weep to see something like this?
But you know that the church also believes in spirituality and
Oh yes, but that's the more reason
and
why.
when it comes to spirituality, well, you could say that witchcraft is for real.
Well, nobody is saying witchcraft is not for real.
Okay.
The thing is, you don't know who is a witch. And that's why you can't sit in judgment over another person.
Okay.
Okay? The most important thing is that person being treated as a human being that has dignity and rights. That's the question.
Okay.
You can't condemn another person if you don't know yourself whether you're a witch or not.
Okay, so this is a challenge thrown out there to the churches, and I'm sure that we'll be reaching out to you to find out what you think about this latest documentary by Justice Baidu. It's showing at 6:30 on this channel, and of course you should find it on Thursday as well on our hotline documentaries. Angela Jamnabwaji is a women empowerment advocate. She's been at this very long enough to say all the things that she has just said here. Angela, thank you very much for coming.
Welcome.
She's also executive director of ACT Foundation. It's all about championing the cause of women.